Xin được chào đón toàn thể quý vị đang đến với buổi hội thảo số 3 của chúng ta trong khuôn khổ Tech Expo năm 2019 của VietnamWorks với chủ đề nâng tầm Agile, thực tiễn, áp dụng và giải pháp công nghệ nâng cao hiệu quả phát triển phần mềm, cùng với các diễn giả đến từ PYCOGROUP, Mr. Richard Kim, Chief Technology Officer from PYCOGROUP. A big hand to welcome him on stage. Và quý vị thân mến, với hơn 20 năm trong ngành phát triển phần mềm, ông Richard từng là Technical Director của rất nhiều công ty kỹ thuật uy tín tại Canada và tại Silicon Valley trước khi về Việt Nam. Hiện tại, ông đang là CTO tại PYCOGROUP, xây dựng thành công đội A-Team gồm các chuyên gia phần mềm nhiều kinh nghiệm, luôn cập nhật các xu hướng kỹ thuật công nghệ mới để cung cấp các giải pháp phần mềm tối ưu cho khách hàng. Và ngay bây giờ thì chúng ta sẽ cùng chào đón vị khách thứ hai của chúng ta. Let's welcome Mr. Doug Elrin, BOT Engineering Manager, Message Media in partnership with PYCOGROUP. Quý vị thân mến, với hơn 10 năm trong vai trò kỹ sư phát triển phần mềm và quản lý dự án, Doug có rất nhiều kinh nghiệm trong việc thiết lập và tối ưu hóa quy trình phát triển phần mềm. Từ năm 2017, ông giúp Message Media xây dựng đội ngũ nhân sự toàn cầu bằng việc phát triển team BOT tại thành phố Hồ Chí Minh. Ông cũng đã huấn luyện đội ngũ các kỹ sư lập trình áp dụng các phương pháp phát triển phần mềm hiện đại dựa trên Scrum và DevOps để không ngừng tối ưu hóa quy trình phát triển deliver phần mềm. Và chúng ta hãy cùng tiếp tục chào đón vị diễn giả thứ ba của chúng ta là Miss Anh Phan, Development Manager, Anh Sadara in partnership with PYCOGROUP. Quý vị thân mến, chị Phan cùng anh đã có hơn 10 năm kinh nghiệm trong việc quản lý dự án, từng giữ nhiều vai trò quan trọng trong các dự án lớn và đóng vai trò quan trọng trong việc phát triển đội ngũ nhân sự Atlassian tại Việt Nam. Gia nhập Ansadara từ năm 2016, chị Tùng Anh hiện là Development Manager của Ansadara tại Việt Nam, xây dựng thành công đội ngũ phát triển phần mềm gồm các kỹ sư tiềm năng với văn hóa đề cao sự chủ động và hợp tác trong công việc. Và vị diễn giả tiếp theo của chúng ta trong seminar số 3 này, xin được hân hạnh chào đón Mr. Hoàng Đỗ, Technical Director của PYCOGROUP. Quý vị thân mến, anh Hoàng Đỗ hiện là giám đốc kỹ thuật tại PYCOGROUP với hơn 13 năm kinh nghiệm trong vai trò Technical Lead và Technical Architect. Anh Hoàng đã cùng team kỹ thuật triển khai thành công nhiều dự án quốc tế với vai trò domain khác nhau như là vận tải, y tế, tài chính. Anh Hoàng là một chuyên gia trong mảng cơ sở dữ liệu, web servers, cung cấp công cụ thiết kế framework of platform. Và quý vị hãy cùng nhau dành một tràng pháo tay thật nồng nhiệt cho đội ngũ speakers rất khủng của chúng ta ngày hôm nay đến từ PYCOGROUP, được không ạ? Ngay bây giờ thì xin được mời toàn thể chúng ta sẽ cùng lắng nghe phần chia sẻ của họ. Let's get started and welcome again everyone.
Thank you very much. Woo! All right. Good morning, everyone. How are you doing today? Yo. So we're gonna run this as a panel discussion. I know these guys were introduced here, but just again, we have Dirk from Message Media. He's the engineering manager there. We have Anne from Ansarada, a development manager there, and we have Huang, who is our technical director at PYCO, and I'm the CTO again. So we're all part of the PYCO family. I'm not sure if you saw, we have a booth in the center area. So please, when you have a chance, please drop by and say hello. We'd be glad to talk to you about any development opportunities that are out there. So anyways, just to start off this panel discussion, the topic is Beyond Agile. So we're going to talk about a collection of practices and technologies that will help boost and accelerate your development on your teams. So maybe first off, if I may, I'd like to ask you guys, how many of you are using Scrum in your teams today? Just a show of hands. Cool. How many of you are using DevOps in your teams today? All right. So we're going to talk a little bit more about those two things, Agile and DevOps, and I'm very, very happy to present these guys. These guys have a ton of experience in both areas, so we'll have a bit of a discussion on that. So just to start, so I'd like to start off the discussion with, today, for those of you who use Agile and use DevOps, there's often, you have your tech team and they're very good at using things like continuous integration, using version control. There's a lot of technical practices that are being implemented probably on a lot of the teams you guys are performing today. But one of the challenges that I see is that sometimes regarding the culture, right? Building a real agile and DevOps-oriented culture is actually quite difficult, right? So I'd like to ask you, maybe Dirk first, with your experience working at Message Media and even before that, how have you dealt with that challenge of building a real culture on your team?
Okay, so first of all, you really need to have the right culture and mindset within the company. So we speak about change process for the whole organization to make sure teams have the right working conditions to deliver better software even faster. So it's not only about changing processes within one team and maybe changing tools. You need to set the whole conditions. Everything needs to be optimized to help the teams. So it starts from product, it goes to service, and also, of course, engineering. So one example, following the DevOps principles, you want to set up teams which are highly independent from a technical side, but also from a process side. So whenever teams needs to wait for other teams for approvals, for deployments, for reviews, the process is stuck. It don't deliver fast. So the whole organization needs to be committed to set up independent working teams which can make their own decisions and be fully responsible for their part of the product.
That's cool. So yeah, definitely independence of teams is really having that empowerment and independence is really important. And in your experience at Sarada, did you experience something similar?
Yeah, of course I agree with your colleague that independent teams within an autonomous environment where teams can make the decisions by their own is very crucial. I also want to add some other different aspects that I have experienced when I built my teams. So I think people say when they talk about Agile, like when you invite your candidates and asking them in the interview session, how did you implement Agile in your company? And they usually answer that, we use Scrum and we will have these sprint plannings and we will have this sprint retrospective and we will have these sprint demos. So what I see is that for a lot of people, Agile means Scrum. And so, for example, in Ansara, we face similar situation. When I first joined Ansara, people argue days after days about how to write user stories right. Okay, you have to write even something, when something, then something. But people need to remember that Scrum is not Agile. Scrum is a tool to assist us in Agile.
Right.
So the essentials of Agile, I think, is about the flexibility, the agility, the way that you actually can be adaptive to all the changes. So I need to remind the teams, okay, what is actually the problem that you are trying to solve? Is given when then solve your problem, or you are trying to just following the books. So if you focus back on where you are and what is the problem you're trying to solve, then Agile will help you to make continuous improvements.
Right.
So that's one aspect of it.
That's great, thank you. Huang, do you have anything to add on that? And just working with your developers, like how are you trying to get that culture really through?
So maybe let me make that from a very technical perspective. Okay. So for me, working through all the waterfall development methodologies and now Agile. So Agile for me from technical perspective is mostly about continuous improvement, like I just mentioned. So what is continuous improvement in technical? It just means that in technical, it's translated into having, firstly, right, so we need to have continuous architecting, and then we have continuous design of the whole application on each of every single feature we are working on every day. So by that, firstly we need to avoid complexity. We need to avoid upfront design, over design, and it's all about simplicity. We must keep it as simple as possible according to the current requirement. Because Agile means that we don't have very far view right from now into the future. For many teams in Agile team, I see that they know only about this spring or the next spring. So how can we predict the architecture in the next year if we just know about 2 spring upfront? Okay? So keeping everything simple is very important. And then how do we adapt? to the trends is. Like Anh just said, right, more flexibility, more adaptable to the trends. So it is about keeping the whole architecture, the whole design continuously improve by applying refactoring. So I think refactoring now is one of the key tools in Agile development that help us keep the architecture, the design very healthy and very up-to-date, live with the whole requirement evolution. And doing code refactoring, right, cannot be safe if you don't have unit tests. So unit tests now become much more important in the Agile development. So any change you are doing on the application, any refactoring you are doing the application, cannot be warranted to be safe without unit tests. And then it comes the CI practices to ensure the shortlist look back from the unit test coverage, unit test result back into development so that we can react as soon as possible for the whole application.
That's a good point. So to add a little bit experience from message media. So in the past, engineering was always focused on delivering highly sophisticated, complex solutions which will last forever, will never break, 100% availability, no bugs at all. Our problem was these kind of features, the parts of it, we are not able to deliver them within a Scrum sprint. So we have sprints of 2 weeks, and if it's too complicated, you cannot groom it, you cannot estimate it, and you cannot deliver within 2 weeks. So it was a culture change to actually train and coach the developers to rather think simple. So we follow the KISS principle, keep it simple and smart. So to really think about what do we need now for the customer, not what do we need maybe in 5 years. So really focusing on the value we need to ship soon.
Yeah, and I just want to add one more thing is, you know, you can try to be as agile as you want on your own team, but if you don't have the support from the senior management, from the top management, so I'm talking about your CEO, your CIO, CTO, whatever that top management is, you know, it's going to be really hard to get a real agile culture in your company because, you know, they might be thinking in a very waterfall or very traditional kind of business process, whereas, you know, to make it really work, you need agile top down, right? Cool. One of the other things that I wanted to talk about was around the whole concept of change management, right? Do you guys know what change management is? Have you worked in a company where, you know, there's a big change approval board, so that every deployment has to go through a big change approval process? Does that sound familiar? Maybe? Anyways, so I've definitely been through those kinds of approval processes to deploy, and that's in more of a, let's say, a traditional IT environment where you have your development team and you have your operations team, right? But now in today, I mean, it's quite interesting. You have really big companies like Facebook and Google. They actually deploy things many times per day, right? Very frequently, but they also manage to do them with a very high rate of success, like not many failed deployments, right? So this whole, you know, concept has been driven through DevOps, right? The whole DevOps culture has really brought this kind of capability, you know. And so I was just curious, like, is that something that you guys are also implementing in your teams as well? And how's it gone? So maybe Anne, if I can start with you.
Sure, so Ansara is no different from the trends.
Yeah.
So actually in Ansara, we have forget all of the approval process. We have almost no approval process in change management. Except for some manual change into production, we still require some light approval, but we try to move away as much as possible from that by making those manual changes become more automatic.
Right.
As you have automation and you go next to the approval. So practice like infrastructure as code, those from DevOps perspective are really helpful here. So the thing is that when you make change happen and without approval, how do you can make sure that what you brings out to the production, to the end users do not break the next day? So what does this mean? Is you really need a whole set of practice to support that system. So the essential part that Asra has been doing in the past few years is to bring quality at front. So we say that it's a quality as speed. How do we do that? We actually have very little ratio between QA and developers. Mm-hmm. We have only about 1 QA per 10 developers. But because we say that it's not quality is not the job of the QA alone. Quality is the job of everybody, and all of the developers need to own the quality. They
Right.
need to take care of their test. Because the QA actually integrated with the teams right from the beginning. They participated in the very early of the development cycle, from requirements, breakdowns, user stories, so on and so forth. And they support the developers to test. And the product manager and the designer also participate in those testing process as well.
Yeah.
We also invested a lot into automation tests. So unit test, component test, end-to-end test,
Yeah.
coverage. And yes, then and another aspect is that we encourage developers to own their systems after they release, so that they will be the one who deploy and maintains. And so if there is any errors, they can quickly fix that and make continuous improvements.
Cool.
Yeah, to have a little experience from message media. So what I find really interesting when you read books about DevOps and high-performing team, you will see actually a lot of statistics that high-performing teams deliver better software more frequently. So they have more deployments and the end quality is even better. So one of our best practices is using feature toggles. So we separate releases from deployments. So what does it mean? We can deploy code changes to production environments, but they are disabled. So they cannot break the system. This means a feature which is still a work in progress on the development side, we can deploy several times a day on production. It doesn't matter because the code is disabled. And then via UI interface, the product manager, whenever he's ready with his marketing campaign to promote a new feature, he can switch it on. So this is how we decrease the likelihood of incidents in production environment.
Thanks a lot for the valid question, Richard. So it reminded me a lot about the time we was doing waterfall, I think maybe 10 years ago. Whenever we receive a change request, what we did, just like the bar, right, you just mentioned, so what we did is that we go through the estimation and then we see if the estimation is more than 16 hours, 16 hours, right? And then we will do we have to do some analysis. I know that some guys sitting here in the room know about this process and they must be smiling when I'm speaking this. Okay. So what did we do is that we have some kind of, if you remember, we have some kind of vertical traceability matrix, where is the relation between the different features. Okay. And we also have horizontal traceability matrix with the relation between different modules or different interfaces. And then whenever we have some trend on these features, we need to analyze whether it grows on the other features. And this is where the scope we need to test and we need to ensure that we have no regression there as well. But then with Agile and with the movement of DevOps practices and unit testing, I think we no more need those things anymore. So personally, I'm a believer in unit testing, and I will keep highlighting this every time. Okay. So having a good unit test approach, good unit test coverage, we have a lot. We simulate every single scenario that we need to verify or validate in even integration environment or production environment at development. And with all those tests, on those scenario cover, whatever trend we match to the system will definitely be verified right there in development machine. And then whatever broken, we can fix that very early in the life cycle of development. And that keeps to save a lot of cost for us to move into integration of production to fix that.
Just to add one point, I really like this. So the idea of shifting tests early to the software delivery lifecycle, it's not only about also finding bugs, of course, you want to find them as early as possible, but bringing the point you mentioned before, continuous improvement. So you help actually the engineering team to learn faster from their own mistakes. If they have to wait 1 week until a test on staging fails, maybe the developer doesn't know the feature anymore, or he's sick, he's not available. But if they get the feedback immediately, the same day, they will learn from it and be a better developer even the next day already. This is what I really like.
Yeah, and that's true, and we have other tools to assist the process of learning. For example, the root cause analysis, post-mortem analysis after an incident happens in production, after change happens and it makes error. Those kind of toolings and processes have developers who own the continuous improvements and make the change necessary so that errors will not happen the next time.
Yeah, exactly. I remember that we have one, I work in one team where they have one practice like this. So whatever happened in production, whatever bug happened in production, it means that it leaked through our unit test and integration test suite, right? So whatever happened in production, we will make sure that we input that back into the development like one unit test case. So we make that back into unit test case suite. We enhance our unit test case suite so that the next time it will never happen in production again. And one more thing I would like to add here is that, okay, so managing the change process, right, is all about the complexity of the change, certainly. And then one thing at the beginning you can do is that at the architecture and design level is that we can reduce the complexity. If we can reduce the complexity of the change, and then we can certainly, right, be more confident with the change. So what can we do with that? It's all about having the right decomposition, having the right modularity of the application, and now I think most of you guys must heard a lot, right, about microservice. Yeah, I come to that point. So doing microservice in the right way, we have a lot. We decompose a very complex domain into subdomain with less complexity so that you can be more controllable, more testable, and more confident to release that. And certainly, right, more frequently, better frequency deliver that to the production.
Cool. Yeah, so a lot of the common things that I heard from you guys is, try to automate and shift things left in your earlier in your process if you can. It's a lot about ownership. I heard a lot about that, right? So it's not about, hey, that's my job, that's your job. It's really about having kind of team overlap of responsibilities, it sounds like, right? And it's also about, it sounds like it's a lot about the way that you actually design and architect your application, right? So I think there's a lot of good stuff there. So the next thing that I just wanted to chat about was, so for those of you who are very familiar with DevOps, there's basically 4 key metrics that are talked about, right, in terms of measuring the performance of your team. One is about, what is the lead time for actually making those changes, right? What's the, how often do you actually deploy your application? What's the time to recovery, right? What's the average time to actually recover from any failures you might have? And what's your actual failure rate, right? So those 4 key metrics are the things that people talk about when they say, hey, you're doing DevOps right, or you're not doing DevOps right. So the one that, they're all obviously interesting, but the one that I really wanted to focus on and talk with you guys is about that lead time to actually, make any changes. That's often something that's quite challenging. Like usually, at a lot of companies that I've worked with before, you have to have a long time before you can deploy anything to production, right? That's pretty typical. So how have you guys dealt with that in the past or currently? Maybe I don't know, wants to take it, Dirk? Sure, take it.
So maybe first of all, what means lead time? So in our understanding is once the requirements are finalized in the backlog and the team is ready to pick them, the lead time starts. So this is where the development team can actually start preparing the next task until the feature is deployed in production. So this is the lead time. And I spoke before about the point, you want to deliver value to customer really fast, because this is how you make money, by delivering features. So there are many techniques to reduce the lead time. We discuss it later. What I find really challenging is that even you improve maybe your team, you have dependencies definitely to other teams. So for example, we as a product company, I need product managers and product owners to provide requirements. So my lead time will go up if the product team is not providing requirements on time or they are not good enough. So this is something where you need to work together, and there's also again an organization change where everyone needs to focus on one goal by really delivering requirements on time with the right quality for the developers. Another point, developers are really smart. So I give them the goal, please deliver tickets, so a small piece of work, really fast. So what my guys did is actually, okay, they broke down features in really small technical tasks and then delivered them really fast. So they kind of were faking my statistics. Because if you think about Scrum, you actually want to deliver value to customer with each task. So there is again like a continuous improvement process behind where you need to coach your team how to actually apply the principles in the right way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, you know, back to what we were saying earlier about building an agile culture and a DevOps culture, right? It seems that, you know, even if your dev team is very good at doing deployments very frequently with small changes, if your product team is coming to you with a huge, you know, business requirements document, that's not going to support the whole model, right? So you really need to have a product team that understands how to give the requirements to your development team in kind of small sort of chunks, if that makes sense. Would you agree?
I would totally agree with you, Richard. And from technical perspective, I would say that the four metrics that Richard mentioned, so I don't know if you are familiar with those metrics, right? But those four metrics were split into two. So in the first two is about how frequent we deploy, and the second part is about the quality of the deploy. Okay. So that metric was very well designed and very well reflect a very good DevOps practices. So I believe that again, I trust in decomposition. Okay. So the matter of how frequent you are able to deploy to production, that depends a lot on the complexity of what you want to deploy. And to reduce that complexity, you must decompose it correctly. So decomposition, we have a lot of practice now to do with that. So at the architecture level, we may have microservice architecture. Like you guys know that's a trendy architecture now. So every application, everyone's speaking about microservice. So we split a very big monolithic into smaller microservice. How small it is would be another, I think it deserves another topic, right, on today. But then, firstly, you need to decompose that into different microservices, or at the design level, we can employ something like domain-driven design. So with domain-driven design, DDD for short, we can have bounded context. So with the bounded context, we can have the subdomain very well isolated. And then the communication and all the invariant, all the visited rule very well coined into each aggregate, so that we can better control the complexity, the join, and then certainly make more frequent deployment to production. And then, and after that, right, certainly many practices from DevOps here with that. For instance, automate as much as possible with infrastructure as code, pipeline as code, and then continuous design architecture with refactoring, and then on, and then eventually when you come to production, right, there can be other practices like feature flag, feature toggles that can help us to enable or disable some feature that we want to test on production, or canary release, for instance, when we want to release the new feature to just a selective audiences instead of impact all the users. So we can see that impact, and then later on, if the result was not so good, we can very easily recover or roll back. Maybe you have something to add, Anh?
Actually, Dirk and Hoàng has said so many good things. One thing in mind is not something that Ansara usually meet with problematics with the results of reducing lead time is the review process. So actually in Ansara, everyone can review other codes, but in some companies, the team leads are the one who reviews the code, then I think in those companies the problem will be bigger because the review is somehow being bottlenecked by the team leaders. So in Ansara, everyone can review others' code, but still developers are very funny. They like to write their own code, but they feel being disrupted when they have to watch the other code, and they tend to delay that at a later time. So I know we have to provide some rules that you have to respond to a peer review within 4 hours. We start to measure the lead time, and once you start measuring it and show it to the teams, then the teams will find their own ways to somehow reduce the lead time.
This align a lot with the practice that they really like, right? In Magic Media about measuring.
Yeah, you just triggered my keyword. Maybe to add this, one of the idea of DevOps is also to make the value stream, so the processes visible. So visualize how you create value. So for example, what I do with the teams is drawing a process diagram, how we go from step to step within the delivery lifecycle. And then you will find steps which are actually not necessary. So for example, you want to avoid manual handovers because this will reduce your quality. You want to avoid bottlenecks, as I said before. if only one tech lead is responsible for 10 developers to do code review, you will have a bottleneck. You don't want to do this. Another point is where you can easily save time is reducing waiting times. So we had in the past like the favorite status of tickets, for example, waiting for QA, waiting for developer, waiting for deployment to production. We try to get rid of all these waiting times because you don't deliver value during that time.
One thing that I find quite funny these days in the world of DevOps is, people say, "Oh yeah, I'm building a DevOps team," right? Are you guys building a DevOps team right now? But actually, that's just the same thing as saying, "Oh, that's our operations team," but now we just call it DevOps. But it's the same thing, right? It's developers doing the code and then just sort of throwing their code over the wall to the DevOps team, right? But the way I understand it is DevOps is really supposed to be about one team, right? And really a shared role, shared ownership with the development team as well, right? So that's one of the things that I found quite funny these days, right? We're just renaming one thing into another. But I'm just curious, like with the teams that you're running, how have you structured like the roles and the responsibilities such that DevOps is really working, if that makes sense? You know what I mean? I don't know, who wants to kick that off?
So maybe I can take that. Okay. So I think that in the Agile world or for modern developers, so now we hear a lot about firstly full stack developer. Okay, and full stack developer is the developer can do both backend and front end and even mobile applications, right? But then now I believe that full stack developer can be translated into something more wider. The approach is that a developer can do even the QC task. So after I write my code, I can unit test my code, but not only that, I can even write integration test of my code. For instance, with some kind of framework like Karate or Catalan framework, I can write integration test of the API level of my application, of my code, and I can even write end-to-end tests. So how many Angular developer we have here in this room? Angular? React.js, please. React.js?
React.
Front-end developer? So I believe that for most Angular and React.js developer, so right at the moment you initialize the application with the skeleton from the framework, you already have end-to-end tests integrated there, right? So all those things was integrated into your development time right at the beginning. So why not? Why don't we do that? Okay. So I'm more believer on that way, and for my team, more and more I try to involve the developer on firstly end-to-end tests. Okay, so they can end-to-end test, write the acceptance test for their own code. And secondly, in the very next future, in the very near future, involved in writing some kind of DevOps script, for instance, they can define their Docker image. Right? They can write a Docker file for deploying their Docker image after viewing everything back to the Kubernetes cluster in AWS, for instance, or Azure. Whatever it means, right? So that now the boundary between the developer, the QC, and the DevOps is really blurry. How do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's about extending your responsibility. It's about the mindset changing from I'm doing only this task to share responsibility, that we all share this product and bring these values to the customers. What I want to touch on Richard's question is how organization structure can help. So Ansara is very lucky that we actually jumped on the DevOps movement quite early. So even 4 years ago, we already started. We removed the DevOps team or the separate operation team. We now establish a DevOps collective. The DevOps collective is not a team; it consists of several DevOps, who each of them will be integrated in a product team. So a DevOps is now a part of the team, and they will work with developers, QAs, and other people to produce the products as usual. In Ansara, so at that time, one DevOps, 10 developers. So of course, the DevOps cannot do everything, maintaining the infrastructure, deploying code, so on and so forth. So the ratio actually forced the developers to do more of the infrastructure tasks. Traditionally belong to the operation team. So at the beginning we do have the fight like, this is your job, no, that's a your job. But after a while, once the developers feel used to the infrastructure staff, they feel encouraged by it, and they will try to do more. And over time, DevOps basically more like an assistant to help others to create the infrastructure and deploy code and so on. And they have the DevOps. Eventually, they have more time to other stuff. For example, they have more time to create toolings that all teams can use. Yeah.
That's a good point. So to actually increase the quality of deployments, our principle in the last, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 years at Message Media was a developer knows it best how to deploy his own feature on production. If he has to hand over to someone else outside of a team and write a manual how to deploy his feature, you will lose time, you will lose quality. And so you will lose time to deliver value to the customer. So we really like the idea of enabling everyone in the team to do production deployment. Can be a QA, can be developer, can be a front-end developer, PHP, Java, or a tech lead. It doesn't matter. Everyone should be able to deploy features on production. And this is really also appreciated by the team because then they feel more responsible for a whole feature set.
Very cool. So guys, I think in terms of time, we have one more topic to talk about, and it's actually my favorite. I find it so interesting that on the topic of DevOps, you know, it's not just good for your end customers, but it's good for your employees, right? So I believe that DevOps really can make your people happy, really happy, right? And what do you guys think? Like, is that something you're seeing by implementing DevOps more in your teams? Are your teams happier? And how's that working out? Wang.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. So I think you know that so now I'm working in PYCO, but for me most of the time, so 50 of my time is still coding. Okay. So I love developing something. So I mean, to a developer. So what is more motivational for yourself, right, than knowing something else, something new? Okay. So instead of just doing, for instance, Java developer, instead of just doing Spring Boot, Spring Data, or whatever Spring, right, all the time, now you can also write Docker file, you can also write Terraform script, right, so that you can deploy, you can instantiate on your infrastructure in cloud, and then you can write script to deploy that into production. That, I mean, for me as a developer, I feel really motivated to do those kind of things. And secondly, one very important from DevOps principle is that I saw from the team is that having a good DevOps practices will help you a lot with avoiding burnout in your team. So what I mean by that is that I think you must all know the day, right? The nightmare day, code delivery day. Okay, so I remember a few years ago, whenever it comes to delivery day, and then the whole team stopped. No one should work on the integration or production environment anymore. The whole DevOps team or the operation team need to work through the night so that we can deploy to production. And then if just one small thing went wrong, and then the whole team needs to stay there in the next day to recover everything, and then maybe to roll back something on production. So with DevOps,
I've been through that.
DevOps practices,
I've been through that.
Yeah. So those kind of nightmare delivery day or even burnout on your team should not exist anymore, and that help a lot with maintain the energy and also the motivation in the team.
What about you, Anne? Can you say that your team is happier because they have a DevOps culture?
Yeah, they are a happy bunch of people. So I think I read a while ago the book Drive from Daniel Pink, and he said that motivation or drive comes from three sources: purpose, autonomy, and mastery. Purpose meaning that is you feel that you're doing the work and it's bringing value, something valuable. Mastery is about your capability that you're doing something very, very well, you're really, really good at it. And autonomy is the feeling that you feel control, that you can make your own decisions. So I think DevOps practice actually help you, the teams, the individuals and the organizations on all three fronts. So firstly, it helps you to do your jobs better, so you increase your mastery. It also allows you a lot of freedom because you, the developer, or the DevOps, or the QA actually owns and shares a lot of responsibility. So a lot of the decisions before, traditionally, those decisions are made by managers, but now they are made by those people who are on their day-to-day jobs. So they have a lot of autonomy. And then once you deliver fast, and you see the results every day, and you see your customers, the end users who use your products every day, you see your value, you see the purpose there. So it increases your drive, it increases your motivation, and it encourages you again adopt more DevOps practice, and it's a very positive cycle again and again.
Okay. I think we're running closely out of time. Do we have time for Q&A? Yes? Was that a yes? No? Okay, yeah. Dirk, how about you? Do you want to share your experience on happiness?
Happiness, yeah. So what I can tell is when we increase the frequency of deployments, we can see developers get happier because they see that their features, what they have delivered and developed in the last days, it gets to real customers and they get feedback. So first of all, they can see it, maybe on a website or in an app. And then we collect data from customers and they get the feedback. So it's a much better feedback loop for developers to actually get positive, maybe sometimes also negative feedback to your own work. But this helps keeping them motivated and to get actually better. Another point is, so we spoke about automation. I think this is a good change for engineers and QAs especially. The more we automate tasks, the more time the team member have for more interesting tasks. So instead of following a manual process for deployment, they now click one button. And so they have more time to actually solving interesting problems or to do research or to develop new features. This really helps them to be happy.
Great, thanks so much. Okay, and I think we're out of time, right? Okay.
Thank you very much. Can you just give them a big round of applause for their wonderful show? Cảm ơn các diễn giả của chúng ta trong seminar thứ 3 của ngày hôm nay được không ạ? Thank you very much.